The weight sits on my back still, 23 kilograms of Vox-Caster equipment distributed across a frame harness that digs into shoulders and hips. I can feel it now, writing this. Phantom pressure. The body remembers loads it carried, even after the flesh stops carrying anything at all. The antenna, extended 1.8 meters above my helmet, made me visible, made me a target. That was the design. My name was Oren Daly. I was 19 years old when they strapped the Vox-Caster to my back. Guardsman, 3rd Platoon, 2nd Company, Hadrian 47th Regiment. We'd been deployed to Carcass IV for 3 weeks before they needed a new relay operator. The previous one had lasted 11 hours. Sniper round through the equipment housing. The Vox unit absorbed most of the impact. The operator died anyway. Shrapnel through the spine. They salvaged the equipment, left his body in the trench. I remember the smell of the staging area where they fitted me with the harness. Promethium exhaust from the idling chimeras. Unwashed bodies pressed into the same uniforms for weeks. The particular chemical smell of fresh corpse starch rations being distributed. Someone was heating them over a portable burner. The smell mixed with exhaust and sweat, and the underlying copper smell that permeated everything on Carcass IV. Blood in the soil. Blood in the air. So much blood that it became atmospheric. The commissar who assigned me the equipment didn't ask if I volunteered. "You scored high on technical aptitude assessments," he said, reading from a data slate without looking at me. "You'll relay command communications between forward positions and battalion headquarters, keep the equipment functional, maintain Vox discipline. The Emperor protects." He handed me the harness. I put it on. The straps needed adjustment. The previous operator had been larger. The technician who fitted it was missing 3 fingers on his left hand. Old wound. He worked quickly with the remaining digits. "The antenna," he said, pointing upward without looking at it. "Don't think about it. The moment you start thinking about it, you'll think about nothing else. Just do the job." I asked how long relay operators typically lasted. He didn't answer, finished the fitting, moved to the next soldier requiring maintenance. I learned the answer through observation. The equipment was always needed. The operators were always being replaced. The Vox-Caster itself was a Vox pattern Mark IV field communications array. Solid construction. The Mechanicus built them to withstand battlefield conditions. The operator was the weak component. The equipment could survive impacts that killed the human carrying it. After each operator fell, they recovered the Vox unit, performed minor repairs, attached it to the next designated relay. The cycle continued. The equipment outlasted us all. I carried the Vox-Caster into the forward trenches that afternoon. The weight shifted as I walked. 23 kilograms distributed across the harness, but it felt heavier, unbalanced. The antenna swayed with each step. I was conscious of it extending above me, making me distinct, making me visible to anyone with a scope and hostile intent. The trenches on Carcass IV ran for 800 kilometers across the contested zone. Our sector was designated Hadrian 77. 2 kilometers of trench line facing enemy positions, 400 meters away, across open ground. The ground between was designated no man's land. The designation was accurate. Nothing human survived crossing it during daylight. Night crossings had slightly better survival rates. Slightly. I reported to Lieutenant Varak in the command dugout. He was young for an officer. 26, face already lined with stress. He'd been on Carcass IV for 4 months. That was a long deployment in this sector. The attrition rate suggested most personnel didn't survive past 6 weeks. He'd beaten the average. That meant luck or competence. Probably both. "You're the new relay," he said. Statement, not question. Previous operator's designation was Relay 7. "You're Relay 8. Respond to either designation or the call sign. Understood?" "Yes, sir." "Your function is transmission. You relay orders from battalion command to forward positions. You relay status reports from forward positions to battalion command. You do not interpret. You do not filter. You do not editorialize. You are the communications channel. The message matters. You don't. Understood. Yes, sir. He handed me a frequency list. Encrypted channels. Command. Network. Emergency frequencies. Artillery coordination. Medevac requests. Each frequency had specific protocols. I studied them while he reviewed the tactical display, the trench line marked in blue, enemy positions in red, the space between empty of markers. That emptiness represented no man's land, represented 400 meters where people died in quantities too large to mark individually. The Vox crackled. I responded automatically. Years of training. Relay 8 receiving. Command to all units. Artillery barrage, Sector Hadrian 7-7, commencing in 5 minutes. Duration 20 minutes. All personnel maintain positions. Acknowledge. I transmitted confirmation back to command. The process took 11 seconds. Efficient. Clean. I felt satisfaction at the efficiency. Small pride. I was performing my function correctly. The artillery barrage began on schedule. The sound defies adequate description. Not thunder. Thunder is natural. This was industrial violence. The shells passed overhead with sounds like tearing metal. Impacts 400 meters away. The ground shook. Dust fell from the dugout's support beams. Lieutenant Varak monitored the tactical display. I monitored the Vox, waiting for transmission. Ready to relay. The barrage lasted 21 minutes. 47 seconds longer than scheduled. When it ended, the silence felt wrong. Ears ringing, pressure differential. Then the Vox crackled again. Command to Hadrian 7-7. Advance positions forward 100 meters. Consolidate report positions secured. Varak's expression didn't change. He turned to the squad leaders present in the dugout. You heard the order. Move forward. Secure the advance line. Report when positions established. They moved out. I remained with Varak. The relay stayed at command position unless specifically ordered forward. The antenna made me too valuable to risk unnecessarily. Too valuable meant the equipment was valuable. The operator was simply the transportation. The advance took 43 minutes. The Vox transmitted continuous updates, squad-level reports, casualty notifications, requests for support. I relayed everything. Varak processed the information, made decisions, gave orders. I transmitted those orders. The cycle continued. First casualty report came at minute 7. Third squad, 2 down. Sniper fire from enemy trench. Continuing advance. I relayed it. Command acknowledged. No additional orders. The advance continued. Minute 12. First squad, position secured, taking sporadic fire. 4 casualties. Requesting ammunition resupply. Relayed, acknowledged. Resupply scheduled. Minute 19. Second squad, position compromised. Heavy resistance. 7 casualties. Unable to advance further. Command responded, hold current position. Artillery support inbound. I transmitted the response. Heard the confirmation. Then heard the screaming start through the Vox. Someone had left their transmission active. The sound of men dying filled the channel. I could hear Laskin fire, explosions. Someone calling for medic, someone else praying. The Emperor's name repeated. Then static as the transmission cut. Lieutenant Barak looked at me. Close that channel. Switch to alternate frequency. I complied. The screaming stopped. The channel closed. I switched frequencies. The tactical situation continued. The advance continued. The dying continued. I relayed information about it. Transmitted status updates. The screaming remained in my memory, but I had functions to perform. The memory could be processed later. By minute 43, the advance was complete. New positions secured 100 meters forward. Casualty count, 27 dead. 41 wounded. 3 missing, presumed dead in no man's land. The Imperium had purchased 100 meters of carcass of 4 at the cost of 71 guardsmen killed or wounded. Someone with access to broader strategic data could calculate whether that exchange was efficient. I only relayed the numbers. That was day 1, hour 4 of my assignment as Relay 8. I learned quickly that relay operators occupied a strange position in the military hierarchy. We were guardsmen, lowest rank structure, but we were present during command decision-making. We heard every order, every casualty report, every desperate plea for support. We were witnesses to the machinery of warfare from a perspective most guardsmen never experienced. They saw the trench they occupied, the enemies they faced, the squad mates who died beside them. We heard everything, every squad, every position, every death. The antenna marked us, 1.8 meters of metal extending above the trench line. Visible to enemy observers, the sniper priority was specific. Officers first, then Vox relay operators. Eliminate command structure and communications infrastructure. Standard doctrine. We were taught this in training. The enemy followed the same doctrine. I was walking around with a target marker attached to my spine. Day 2, I met Relay 3. His designation suggested he'd survived longer than most. He operated in the adjacent sector, Hadrian 7-6. We crossed paths during the communications equipment maintenance cycle. Both of us at the rear area, both stripped of our harnesses temporarily while technicians inspected the Vox units. He was older, 28. That was ancient for a relay operator. He'd been carrying the Vox-Caster for 7 weeks. I asked him how he'd survived that long. Luck, he said, and understanding the mathematics. The enemy can't target every relay. They focus fire on the most obvious positions. Command posts. Forward observation points. If you're operating from secondary positions, you're lower priority. The antenna is still visible, but you're not the first target. Someone else dies before you. You rely on that. You survive because others are dying instead. The analysis was cold, accurate. I processed it. That's survival through sacrifice of others. That's survival, he said. The others are dying anyway. You can't prevent it. You can only control your own positioning. Stay away from obvious command locations when possible. Move frequently. Never transmit from the same position twice in succession. The enemy triangulates Vox signals. If you're predictable, you're dead. I integrated this information. Asked if he'd trained other relay operators. His expression changed, became more distant. 4, he said. They assigned me to train 4 replacements, transfer my knowledge, improve survival rates. All 4 died within 3 days. 2 to snipers. 1 to artillery. 1 tried to desert, and the commissar executed him. Training didn't matter. The mathematics are simple. The enemy kills relay operators faster than we can train them. You survive through random chance, not preparation. Then why train? Because command needs to believe they're doing something to improve survival rates. Training provides the illusion of control, makes the casualty numbers seem acceptable. We trained them properly, they just had bad luck. Easier than admitting the role is designed for rapid attrition. The technician returned his Vox unit. Relay 3 put the harness back on. The weight settled onto his shoulders with practiced familiarity. He'd carried it for 7 weeks. The straps had worn grooves in his uniform, permanent indentations where the weight pressed constantly. He saw me looking. You'll develop the same marks, he said, if you survive long enough. The equipment weighs more after a while. Not physically, you just become more aware of it, more conscious of what it represents. The antenna becomes the only thing you can think about. You're always aware of it extending above you, always calculating sightlines, always wondering if someone's scope is tracking you. That's the real weight, the psychological load. 23 kilograms of equipment, infinite kilograms of awareness. He left, returned to his sector. I didn't see him again. 3 days later, I heard the casualty report through the Vox. Relay 3 killed by artillery strike. Direct hit on his position. The Vox unit was destroyed. They'd need a complete replacement, not just a new operator. The equipment had finally failed. The Mechanicus would need to provide new hardware. Small disruption in the supply chain, easily corrected. His replacement was designated Relay 4. I never learned his name. He lasted 6 hours, sniper round through the chest. The Vox unit survived. They attached it to Relay 5 the same day. I learned the pattern. We were components. Interchangeable, replaceable. The designation mattered. The person didn't. Relay 8 could be anyone. The function remained constant. Receive transmission. Process information. Relay message. Repeat until component failure. Component failure meant operator death. Replace component. Continue operation. Day 5, the Vox transmitted an order that required me to move forward. Relay 8. Advance to forward observation point, grid designation 7743. Support artillery coordination. Duration estimated 3 hours. I acknowledged. Gathered equipment. Moved forward through the trench network. The forward observation point was a reinforced dugout 100 meters from the front line. Closest I'd been to direct combat since assignment as relay. The sound of lasgun fire was constant, not the distant thunder of artillery, the sharp cracks of individual weapons. Close enough to distinguish individual shots. The artillery spotter was a sergeant named Cullen, 40 years old, face like leather. He'd been spotting artillery for 6 years across 4 different war zones. He barely glanced at me. "Set up there," he said, pointing to a corner of the dugout. "I'll call corrections. You relay them to fire control. Speed matters. Delays cost lives." I positioned myself, extended the Vox antenna through the dugout's communication port, established contact with artillery fire control, confirmed ready status. Cullen moved to the observation slit, aimed his scope across no man's land, began calling targets. Target designation Alpha 7. Enemy machine gun emplacement. Range 430 meters. Bearing 270. Request immediate suppression. I relayed the information. Fire control acknowledged. 17 seconds later, artillery impacted the designated coordinates, Cullen observed. Target destroyed. Shifting fire. Target designation Alpha 8. Enemy trench position. Range 410 meters. Bearing 265. The process continued. Cullen identified targets. I relayed coordinates. Artillery responded. The efficiency was remarkable. The coordination between observer, relay, and fire control created a system that converted information into explosive violence with minimal delay. We were functioning as designed. Optimized components in the Imperial war machine. 40 minutes into the coordination cycle, Cullen paused, adjusted his scope. His posture changed, tension visible even in the dim light of the dugout. "We have enemy relay," he said quietly. "Visible antenna, their side, range 420 meters, bearing 272. I can mark him for artillery or sniper." He looked at me. I understood the question he wasn't asking. We were observing an enemy relay operator, someone performing the same function I performed, carrying the same equipment, experiencing the same burden. Cullen could eliminate him. Disrupt enemy communications, standard tactical action. But he wanted to see if I'd object. I didn't object. I said, "Relay to fire control. Priority target enemy communications infrastructure." Cullen nodded. Transmitted the coordinates. Fire control confirmed. 23 seconds later, artillery impacted the enemy position. When the smoke cleared, the antenna was gone. Their command network was temporarily disrupted. Our tactical advantage improved marginally. The mission continued. I felt nothing about it. That was the moment I recognized my transformation had begun. An enemy relay operator had just died because I relayed the coordinates that killed him. He'd been performing the same function I performed. We were mirrors, functionally identical, different uniforms, different armies, same role, same burden, same expendability. And I'd participated in his death without hesitation, without moral consideration. Because that was my function. I relayed information. The information killed people. That was its purpose. Cullen returned to target spotting. I returned to relaying coordinates. The system continued. We were components fulfilling design specifications. The enemy relay's death was simply component elimination. The enemy would replace him. Designate the next operator. Attach the salvaged equipment if it survived. Continue their operations. We'd eliminated their current relay. We hadn't disrupted their system. The system was designed to absorb component loss, just like ours. 3 hours later, I returned to the command dugout. Lieutenant Varric reviewed the artillery effectiveness report, confirmed satisfactory performance, dismissed me to standard duties. I resumed position, resumed monitoring the Vox, resumed relaying. The routine had already become automatic. I no longer thought about the process. My hands operated the equipment. My voice transmitted messages. My consciousness observed from somewhere behind the actions. Detached. Processing. Learning to separate execution from experience. Day 8 brought a major offensive. Battalion-level assault across our entire sector. The Vox traffic intensified beyond anything I'd experienced. Continuous transmissions. Overlapping channels. Casualty reports arriving faster than I could relay them. I developed a system. Prioritized command orders. Delayed status reports. Compressed casualty notifications into batched transmissions. The individual deaths became data points, numbers to aggregate and transmit efficiently. First company, 3rd platoon reports 60% casualties. Unable to advance further. Second company, 2nd platoon secured objective. 12 effectives remaining from original 43. 5th company reports complete squad elimination, sectors 7 through 11. No survivors. I transmitted the information without processing the meaning. 60% casualties meant 26 people dead or wounded from a 43-person platoon. Complete squad elimination and 43 people had stopped existing. The numbers were accurate, the transmissions were efficient, the personal implications were irrelevant to my function. Lieutenant Varric processed the tactical situation, made decisions based on the data I provided, allocated reserves, ordered withdrawals, authorized artillery support. Each decision resulted in new transmissions, new orders, new casualty reports. The cycle accelerated. I operated the Vox without conscious thought, muscle memory. Trained response, the equipment and I had become synchronized. I was beginning to think like a relay, process input, transmit output, disregard content. The offensive lasted 9 hours. Final casualty count, 417 wounded, 141 missing. Our forces had advanced 400 meters across a 3-kilometer front. The Imperium had purchased 1,200 meters of carcass IV at the cost of 1,231 casualties. The exchange rate had improved from day 1. Progress, efficiency, acceptable losses within projected parameters. I transmitted the final casualty report to Battalion Command, heard the acknowledgement, felt nothing. The numbers were accurate, the transmission was complete. My function was fulfilled. That was sufficient. Day 12, I encountered something that should have affected me, should have created emotional response. A voice on the Vox, someone I recognized, Private Mendel. We'd trained together. Same regiment, same deployment. He'd been assigned to 3rd platoon. Different company. I hadn't seen him since deployment began, but I recognized his voice immediately when he transmitted. Any relay, this is 3rd platoon scout forward position. We're cut off. Enemy forces between us and friendly lines. 12 of us wounded. Low ammunition, request immediate extraction or support. 3rd platoon scout forward. This is Relay 8. Received your transmission. Stand by. Relay 8. Orin. Throne. Is that you? Protocol violation. Using personal names on command channels. But I responded. Affirmative. Stand by for command response. I relayed the situation to Lieutenant Varric. He consulted the tactical display, studied the position, calculated resources, made his decision. Negative on extraction, no assets available, no clear route. They're beyond effective support range. Order them to hold position until enemy forces withdraw or situational change permits extraction attempt. I understood the order. I understood what it meant. Mendel and 11 others were abandoned, left to die or surrender. The tactical situation made extraction impossible. The resource allocation made support unfeasible. The decision was militarily sound. It was also a death sentence. I transmitted the order, 3rd Platoon scout forward, command orders hold current position. Extraction not feasible, current tactical situation. Maintain defensive posture, await situational change. Silence, then Mendel's voice. Acknowledged, we'll hold as long as we can. Tell command, tell them we did our duty. Command acknowledges, the Emperor protects. The transmission ended. I logged it, filed the report. Continued monitoring other channels. Mendel's position remained on the tactical display for 6 hours. Then the position marker changed from blue to gray. Contact lost. Presumed overrun. 12 casualties added to the daily count. The names would be recorded. The bodies probably wouldn't be recovered. The war continued. I recognized that I'd just condemned someone I knew to death. Someone I'd trained with, shared meals with, listened to his stories about home, about family, about the life he'd lived before the Guard, and I'd relayed the order that abandoned him without hesitation, without protest, without even considering protest, because protest wasn't my function. I was the relay, the message, not the decision, not the advocate, not the conscience, just the transmission medium. Mendel was dead because tactical situation made extraction unfeasible. I'd transmitted that reality? Had I killed him? No, I'd simply relayed the information that resulted in his death. The distinction felt important, then stopped feeling important. Then I stopped considering it at all. The transformation was accelerating. Day 17, they assigned me a partner. Another relay operator, designated Relay 9. He was young, 18, fresh from training battalion. This was his first combat deployment. They paired him with me for familiarization. Learning the role through observation, I was now experienced enough to train replacements. His name was Tessa. No, that's wrong. His name was Teslan. I remember now because he mentioned it repeatedly. Talked constantly during the first day. About training, about family, about nervousness, about duty. I let him talk. Didn't discourage it, didn't encourage it. Just performed my function while he observed. How long have you been doing this? He asked during a quiet period. 17 days. That's all? They said you were experienced. That I'd be learning from a veteran relay. 17 days is experienced for this role. The previous Relay 8 lasted 11 hours. I've outlasted base survival expectations by significant margin. How many relay operators have died since you started? I calculated. In our sector, 6. Adjacent sectors, estimated 18. Total across battalion operations zone, approximately 47. These numbers reflect only confirmed casualties. Actual number, likely higher accounting for missing presumed dead. The attrition rate is documented. Command factors it into equipment procurement schedules. The Mechanicus provides replacement Vox units based on predicted operator casualty rates. The system is designed to absorb the losses. Teslan was quiet after that. Watched me work, observed the procedures, learned the frequencies. I explained the technical requirements, the tactical protocols, the survival strategies Relay 3 had shared with me. Move frequently, avoid obvious positions, accept that survival is statistical probability, not personal capability. He learned quickly. Day 3 of his observation period, he was operating the backup Vox unit independently, handling overflow traffic, demonstrating competence. I filed a positive assessment, recommended him for independent relay assignment. He thanked me, said I was a good teacher. Day 4 of his observation, enemy artillery bracketed our position. First shell hit 20 meters east. Teslan flinched, pressed against the trench wall. Natural response. The Vox crackled. Transmission incoming. I responded, maintained position. Continued operation. The second shell hit 15 meters west. Closer. Teslan looked at me, fear visible, obvious. I continued relaying the transmission. Function before survival instinct. The third shell hit the trench directly, 10 meters north of our position. The impact threw Teslan against the trench wall. He dropped. I maintained position, finished the transmission, then assessed damage. Teslan was wounded. Shrapnel in his left arm and torso. Bleeding, conscious. Probably survivable with treatment. I called for medic, continued monitoring the Vox. Medical response would arrive when available. The medic arrived 7 minutes later. Assessed Teslan. Administered treatment. Recommended evacuation. I helped load him onto the stretcher. He looked at me. "You didn't stop," he said. "The shells were hitting, and you didn't stop transmitting. The transmission was priority. Completion required. You would have died completing it." Yes, that's the function. They carried him away. I never saw him again. Heard later he'd been evacuated off-world. Wounds severe enough to end his deployment. He'd survived 4 days as a relay operator. Survived because he'd been wounded severely enough to be removed from the role. Survival through injury. Better than survival through death. They assigned me Relay 10 3 days later. Different person, same role. Same training process. I repeated the procedures, explained the protocols. Trained the replacement. The cycle continued. Relay 10 lasted 6 days. Sniper round through the Vox unit. The equipment absorbed the impact. He died anyway. Electrical discharge from the damaged systems. Stopped his heart. Instant casualty. They salvaged the equipment. Performed repairs. I attended the equipment blessing. The tech priest performed the rites. Anointed the machine spirit. Apologized for the operator's failure to protect the sacred hardware. The ritual placed responsibility on the dead operator. The machine was innocent. The human was guilty of insufficient protection. The framework absolved the system. Blamed the component. I didn't object. The framework was logical within its own structure. The Vox unit was valuable. Difficult to replace. The operator was abundant. Easy to replace. Protecting the valuable resource made tactical sense. That the valuable resource was a machine and the replaceable resource was human simply reflected accurate resource assessment. Week 4 began with a new offensive, larger scale, division-level operation. Our sector was supporting effort for the main assault 200 kilometers north. The Vox traffic became overwhelming, multiple channels active simultaneously. I operated 2 Vox units, 1 command frequency, 1 tactical frequency, split attention between both. Relaying continuously, the transmissions blurred together, orders, reports, casualties, confirmations the content stopped registering as language, became pure information flow, input, process, output, repeat. Lieutenant Varak was replaced on day 26, killed by enemy artillery. The replacement was Lieutenant Thesk, younger, 23, less experienced. He relied on me heavily, asked questions about tactical situation, about previous operations, about sector history. I provided information, became not just the relay but the institutional memory. I'd survived long enough to become a resource. Knowledge base, the officer was replaceable. The experienced relay was valuable. The hierarchy had inverted. Day 28 brought the person who would matter most. The primary bond, though I didn't recognize it then. His name was Vrel Ton, Sergeant 2nd Platoon. He transmitted a request for artillery support, professional, calm, precise coordinates, clear assessment. I relayed the information, confirmed fire mission, maintained contact while artillery prepared. Standard procedure, but something in his voice registered. Competence, certainty, control. Most transmissions carried panic or fatigue or resignation. His carried purpose. The artillery mission was successful. Vrel transmitted thanks. Unusual. Most operators simply acknowledged and moved on. The thanks suggested awareness, recognition that I was human, not just equipment. Small gesture, meaningless tactically, but it registered. 2 hours later, he transmitted again. Different situation. Requesting medical evacuation. 1 critical casualty. He provided status updates while awaiting transport. Kept the wounded soldier stable through voice coaching. Calm instructions. Steady presence. I relayed status to medical coordination. Maintained open channel. Listened to him work. The wounded soldier survived long enough for extraction. Vrel confirmed handoff to medical personnel, then returned to standard operations. I noted his efficiency, his competence, his humanity maintained under pressure. The qualities were rare. Most personnel degraded under sustained combat, became mechanical or panicked or resigned. Vrel maintained balance, functioned effectively without losing himself. Day 30, we met physically. He came to the command dugout for briefing, face-to-face meeting. First time I saw him directly. He was 31 years old, tall, lean, face weathered by extended deployment, eyes that tracked constantly, combat awareness. He looked at me, actually looked, not past me at the equipment, at me. "You're Relay 8, he said. "Affirmative. I've been transmitting to you for 3 days. Wanted to confirm you were real. Some of the men think the relays are servitors. Programmed responses. No actual human. Just Vox equipment with synthetic voice. I'm human. Guardsman Oren Dale. Designation Relay 8. He extended his hand. I took it. Physical contact. Rare in this environment. The gesture acknowledged personhood. Vrel tone. Good to meet the voice. You're efficient. I've worked with a lot of relays. You're the best I've encountered. The compliment should have meant nothing. Performance assessment, professional acknowledgement. But it registered. Someone had noticed. Someone recognized capability. Small pride, inappropriate, unprofessional. But present. I perform my function, I said. You do, which is why I'm here. I need reliable communication for the next operation. Command is assigning forward elements to deep patrol. Extended duration. Isolated position. Communications will be critical. I requested you, specifically, as relay support. I looked at Lieutenant Thesk. He consulted his data slate. Confirmed. Relay 8 assigned to support 2nd Platoon Deep Patrol. Duration estimated 5 days. You'll accompany forward element. Maintain direct support. This was unusual. Relays typically operated from command positions, protected placement. We were too valuable to risk at forward positions. But Vrel had requested me specifically. Command had approved. I would be moving to the most dangerous position I'd occupied since assignment as relay. I acknowledged the order. Prepared equipment. Vrel waited while I performed pre-mission checks. Watched me work. You're thorough, he said. The equipment must function. Failure means communication loss. Communication loss means casualties. You're not wrong. But most relays I've worked with treat it like burden. You treat it like responsibility. There's a difference. There was a difference. I'd stopped noticing when the shift occurred. The Vox-Caster had been burden initially. Weight on my back, target on my spine, threat to survival. Somewhere during the previous 30 days, it had become responsibility. Purpose. Function. My identity had merged with the role. I was Relay 8, not Guardsman Dale performing relay duties. The function had consumed the person. We moved out that evening. 8-person patrol, Vrel as squad leader, 6 guardsmen, me as communications support. We walked through no man's land under darkness, 400 meters across open ground, every step expecting enemy fire. Last rounds in the dark, artillery, mines, none came. We reached enemy side intact, moved into the ruins beyond their trench line. Established observation position in a collapsed structure's basement. The position was isolated, 4 kilometers behind enemy lines. No support available. No rapid extraction possible. If we were discovered, we'd be eliminated before friendly forces could respond. The mission was observation only. Monitor enemy logistics, report movements, maintain stealth. Duration 5 days. I established Vox contact with Battalion Command, confirmed position, confirmed operational status, then reduced transmission frequency, limited Vox use, enemy signals intelligence could triangulate active transmissions. We maintained communication silence except scheduled check-ins, twice daily, dawn and dusk, minimal transmissions, maximum stealth. The isolation was profound. For 30 days, I'd been immersed in continuous Vox traffic, constant transmission, unending information flow. Suddenly, silence. The Vox remained active, monitoring channels, but no transmissions, no relaying, no function to perform. Just waiting, listening. The absence of purpose was disorienting. Vrel noticed. "You're uncomfortable," he said during the first night. "I'm functional, but uncomfortable. You've been relaying continuously for a month. Suddenly, nothing to relay. It feels wrong." He was correct. The emptiness felt like failure, like I'd stopped performing function. The equipment was operational. The channels were open, but silent. I was a relay with nothing to relay. Purpose suspended. "Talk to me," Vrel said. "Not transmission. Conversation, you're human. Remember that." I didn't know how to respond. Conversation wasn't function, wasn't protocol, wasn't mission relevant, but he was squad leader. His instruction carried authority. I attempted conversation. "What should I talk about?" "Anything. Where you're from, what you did before the guard, anything that reminds you that you existed before becoming Relay 8. I searched memory, found fragments, Hadrian Hive, lower levels. Manufacturing district. I worked assembly lines before conscription. Component fitting, small parts, precision work, family. You think about them? I considered. No, not regularly. The information isn't relevant to current operations. Vrel was quiet, then said, "That's what I'm talking about. You've stopped thinking about things that aren't mission relevant. You've optimized yourself, eliminated unnecessary processing, made yourself more efficient. But you've also made yourself less human. Efficiency improves performance. Human emotion degrades operational capability. Maybe. But human emotion is what you're fighting to protect. The Imperium isn't just territory and resources. It's people, lives. If you stop being human, what are you protecting?" The question had no logical answer, or had too many answers. The Imperium's doctrine taught that individual humanity was less important than collective function. That service superseded self. That duty transcended personal experience. I'd internalized the doctrine completely, become the ideal Imperial servant, efficient, functional, emotionless. And something about Vrel's question suggested that was wrong, that I'd lost something important while gaining efficiency. The dissonance was uncomfortable. I'd been comfortable with my transformation, comfortable with becoming component. Vrel's presence disrupted that comfort. We maintained position for 5 days, observed enemy movements, logged logistics patterns. I transmitted reports during scheduled windows, brief, encrypted, minimal. The patrol was successful. We gathered intelligence, avoided detection, extracted without contact. Mission success. But something changed during those 5 days. Vrel talked to me. Conversations, not mission relevant. Stories about his home, about service history, about the men he'd served with, about losses, about small victories, about maintaining humanity in an environment designed to eliminate it. "I've been in the Guard for 9 years, he said during the 4th night. Served on 6 different worlds, survived situations that killed most of my squads. You know what kept me alive? Not training, not equipment. Memory. I remember everyone who died, remember their names, their faces, what they talked about. I carry them. The weight is enormous. But it keeps me human. The moment I stop remembering them as people, I become what the Imperium wants, a processed component. I refuse to give that up." He looked at the Vox-Caster on my back. "You're carrying physical weight, 23 kilograms. But you've eliminated the other weight, the human weight. You don't remember the people who die when you relay casualty reports. You've made yourself efficient. Maybe that's necessary. Maybe that's how you survive, but it's also how you stop being Oren Dalle and become only Relay 8. I'd stopped processing casualties as people, started processing them as data, numbers, statistics, efficient, clean, emotionless, and he was suggesting that was loss, that something valuable had been discarded. If I process every casualty as person, I said, the emotional weight would be incapacitating. Hundreds die daily. I relay most casualty reports. To feel each one would prevent function. I know. I'm not saying you should feel everything. I'm saying don't feel nothing. Find balance. Remember some, the ones that matter. Don't let the system process you completely. Return to friendly lines, submitted reports, mission success confirmed. Vrel returned to his platoon. I returned to the command dugout, resumed standard relay duties. The Vox traffic resumed. Continuous transmission. I performed function. But something was different. Vrel had planted doubt, had reminded me that I'd been human, that humanity was being processed out, that I'd collaborated in my own dehumanization by accepting efficiency as virtue. The doubt was uncomfortable, destabilizing, but present. Day 36, I made a choice. Conscious decision. When casualty reports came through, I listened to the names. Didn't just transmit numbers. Listened to names. Sergeant DeVal, Private Christoph, Guardsman Menon. I heard the names, registered them. Chose to remember 3, just 3, not hundreds. 3 whose names I'd carry. Small resistance, small humanity maintained. It was exhausting. The emotional weight Vrel had described. Real, immediate. Those 3 names carried history. People who'd lived, had thoughts, had hopes, had ended. And I was choosing to acknowledge that. To carry that weight alongside the physical weight of the Vox-Caster. Day 40, Vrel transmitted a request. His voice on the Vox. Professional. Calm. Relay 8. Need artillery support. Coordinates following. Enemy position overrunning our trench section. Immediate response required. I relayed. Fire mission confirmed. Artillery inbound. Standard procedure. Vrel maintained transmission. Providing updates. Adjusting fire. The mission unfolded normally. Then I heard Lasgun fire through his Vox. Close. Very close. He was under direct assault while calling artillery. Adjusting target. They're in the trench. Danger close. Bring it on our position. We're going to take cover. Fire when ready. Danger close meant artillery falling on friendly position, meant accepting casualties to eliminate enemy. Standard doctrine when overrun. I relayed coordinates. Fire control confirmed. Warned of friendly fire risk. I confirmed. Vrel's order. His decision. The artillery impacted. I heard it through the Vox. The channel went static. Interference from the explosions. Seconds stretched. I waited. Monitoring. Waiting for transmission. For confirmation. For Vrel's voice. Static continued, then cleared. Vrel's voice. Strained. Damaged. But present. Relay 8. Position secured. Enemy eliminated. We have casualties. 3 dead. 4 wounded. I'm wounded. Requesting medical support. I relayed. Confirmed support inbound. Maintained channel. What's your status? Shrapnel. Left side. Bad. But conscious. I'll hold until medic arrives. Confirmed. Stay on channel. You're worried. I can hear it in your voice. You're not supposed to worry. You're supposed to relay. I'm relaying and worried, both simultaneously. He laughed, coughing, pain evident. Good. That's good. You're still human. Maintain that. The medical support arrived. I monitored while they treated him, stabilized him, prepared evacuation. He remained conscious through treatment, continued transmitting, talking, maintaining connection. Relay 8. Oren. If I don't make it, remember what I said. Don't let them process you completely. Maintain something human. Promise me, you're going to survive. Medical confirms stable status. Promise anyway. I made the promise, transmitted it. He acknowledged. They loaded him for evacuation. The channel closed. He was gone from my operational area. Evacuated to rear medical facilities. I'd fulfilled function. Maintained communication, coordinated support, mission success. But I felt loss, actual loss, emotional response. Vrel had become connection. Primary bond, person who mattered beyond function. And now he was gone. Not dead, but gone from my environment. The absence registered. Hurt. The pain was uncomfortable, inappropriate, unprofessional, and human. I was feeling human emotion. Vrel had achieved his goal, had maintained my humanity enough that loss registered, had prevented complete transformation. The victory felt hollow, painful, but real. I never saw Vrel again. Monitored casualty reports. Never saw his name. He survived, was evacuated off-world, recovered somewhere beyond Carcass IV. The knowledge should have been satisfying. He lived. But satisfaction was muted by absence. He was alive but gone. The distinction mattered. Day 42. I trained another replacement. Relay 11. Different person. Same process. I repeated Vrel's guidance. Told the replacement to maintain humanity. To remember names. To resist complete transformation. Relay 11 looked confused. But efficiency requires emotional distance. Training doctrine emphasizes detachment. Training doctrine creates optimal components. You can be optimal component or you can be human. Attempting both is difficult, but necessary. Or you become only machine. Maybe couldn't understand, hadn't experienced what I'd experienced, hadn't met someone like Vrel who demonstrated alternative, hadn't survived long enough to recognize what was being lost. He'd learn, or he'd die before learning. The statistical probability favored death. Relay 11 lasted 3 days. Artillery, the Vox unit was damaged. Required extensive repair. I attended the blessing ceremony. Watched the tech priest perform rites. Listened to prayers for the machine spirit. Apologies for the operator's failure. The framework blamed the human. Protected the machine. Standard procedure. Day 47, the offensive collapsed. Enemy counterattack. Massive scale. Our lines broke in multiple locations. General retreat ordered. Battalion-level withdrawal. The Vox traffic was chaos. Overlapping transmissions. Panic. Desperation. I maintained function. Relayed orders. Coordinated retreat. Prioritized information. The training held. The transformation held. Under maximum stress, I became pure relay. Emotion suspended. Humanity suspended. Only function. The withdrawal took 11 hours. Casualties enormous. Final count, estimated 2,300 across battalion. 37% casualty rate. The Imperium's hold on the sector had collapsed. We'd surrendered territory purchased with thousands of lives. The mathematics suggested failure. Command reported it as tactical repositioning. Semantic difference. We'd retreated. We'd lost. The dying had been for nothing. I transmitted the reports without comment, without evaluation. The function didn't require moral assessment, only accurate information relay. I was efficient, optimal, exactly what was required, and completely empty. Day 50, they assigned me to different sector. New command, new operations. I packed equipment, walked away from Hadrian 7-7. Left behind the trenches I'd operated from for 50 days. Left behind the positions where relay operators 3 through 15 had died. Left behind the place where I'd been transformed from Guardsman Dale into Relay 8. The new sector was designated Hadrian 9-3. Different geography. Same war. Same function. I established position. Resumed operations. The Vox traffic was familiar. Orders, reports. Casualties. I relayed everything. The efficiency remained, the function remained, the humanity Vrel had helped me preserve remained. Barely. 3 names. I remembered 3 names. Held them against the hundreds I processed daily. Week 8 brought new relay operators to train. 2 simultaneously. Relay 16 and Relay 17. Both young, both frightened. Both trying to hide the fear. I trained them efficiently. Explained procedures. Demonstrated technique. Shared survival strategies. They listened. They learned. They didn't understand the cost. Relay 16 died on his second independent operation. Sniper. The Vox unit survived. Relay 17 lasted 6 days. Enemy raid. Killed in close combat. The Vox unit was recovered. I attended both equipment blessing ceremonies. Listened to the tech priest blame the operators. Absolve the machines. The ritual had become routine. Expected. Normal. Day 63, I almost died. Artillery barrage. Shell impacted 3 meters from my position. The blast threw me against the trench wall. The Vox-Caster absorbed most of the impact. The equipment shattered. Components destroyed. I was wounded, shrapnel in my back and legs, but alive, conscious. The medic arrived, assessed damage, confirmed survivable wounds, recommended evacuation. I refused. The Vox unit is destroyed, need replacement. I can continue function with new equipment. The medic looked at me. Confusion evident. You're wounded, you need treatment. Evacuation. Wounds are not incapacitating. Function can continue. Provide replacement Vox unit. He reported to command. They debated, finally decided. Provided new Vox unit. Different model, heavier. 27 kilograms instead of 23. The weight settled onto wounded back, pain sharp, immediate. I ignored it, established communications, resumed function. The medic watched me. You should evacuate. Those wounds are serious. The wounds are acceptable. The function is critical. I'm the experienced relay. Replacing me reduces operational efficiency. He's effed. Reported to medical, they logged it. Recommended evacuation, command overruled. Operational necessity, the experienced relay was too valuable. Continue operation. I'd made the choice. Command had accepted. I was component maintaining function, despite damage. Operating beyond design parameters, achieving efficiency through suffering. Vrel would have been disappointed, would have said I was proving his point. That I'd chosen machine over human, function over self, that I'd collaborated in my own consumption, he would have been correct. But he was gone. His influence was fading. The system's influence was total. Day 70, the wounds became infected. Field conditions, inadequate treatment, inevitable. The infection degraded performance. Fever developed. Consciousness fluctuated. I maintained function, relayed transmissions. The accuracy suffered. I began making errors, transposing numbers, confusing channels. Minor mistakes, but mistakes nonetheless. Command noticed, called me to headquarters. Medical officer assessed condition. You're septic. The infection is spreading. You need immediate evacuation and intensive treatment. You're no longer combat effective. I can maintain function. The errors are minimal, acceptable degradation. You're dying. The infection will kill you within days without treatment. You've achieved far beyond expected duration for relay operators. 69 days. That's exceptional. You've earned evacuation. Accept it. 69 days. I'd survived 69 days as Vox relay operator. The average survival was 8 days. I'd beaten expectations by factor of 8. Statistical anomaly. Random chance. Luck that had extended beyond probability. And now ending. Not from enemy action, from infection, from body failure, from operating beyond human limits until the body rebelled. They evacuated me that evening, loaded me onto transport, removed the Vox-Caster. The weight lifted, 27 kilograms gone. The absence felt wrong, incomplete. I'd carried that weight for 70 days. It had become part of me. Identity, purpose, function. Without it, I was undefined. Just wounded guardsman, not Relay 8. The designation would be retired, assigned to next operator. I'd become former designation. Archived. The transport lifted. Carcass IV fell away. I watched through the viewport, saw the trench lines, the battlefield, the place where I'd been transformed, the place where 23 relay operators had died while I survived. I'd outlasted them all through random chance, through luck, through willingness to sacrifice humanity for efficiency. I'd become exactly what the system required, and survived because of it. The treatment took 3 weeks. Aggressive antibiotics, surgery to remove infected tissue, recovery in a Medicaid facility far from the front. The body healed, the wounds closed, the infection cleared. I was restored to functional status, cleared for return to duty. They processed my reassignment, asked about preferred placement. I requested return to relay operations. The request was denied. You've exceeded sustainable deployment duration. Relay operations require personnel who haven't been psychologically compromised by extended exposure. You're reassigned to logistics coordination, rear echelon support. You'll train new relay operators, transfer your experience, improve survival rates. I'd become what Relay 3 had been. The experienced operator who trained replacements, who watched them die, who accumulated casualty knowledge, who recognized the mathematics of attrition. The cycle had continued. I was now the teacher, the witness, the survivor who would train the next generation of components. I trained 47 relay operators over the following 6 months, all of them deployed to various battlefields: Carcass IV, Hadrian Prime, Vorian Secundus, other war zones, other meat grinders. I don't know how many survived. I trained them efficiently, taught them procedures, shared survival strategies, watched them leave, heard casualty reports, recognized designations: Relay 23, Relay 41, Relay 68, numbers, functions, components I'd processed and released into the system that consumed them. I recognized that I'd become instrument of consumption. I wasn't relay anymore. I was processor, training humans to become relays, converting individuals into functions, improving efficiency, reducing survival time from 8 days to perhaps 9 days through better training, marginal improvement, statistical optimization. I was participating in the system, perpetuating it, making it function better, consuming more efficiently. The realization should have created moral crisis, should have triggered resistance. Didn't. I'd been too thoroughly processed. The transformation was complete. I was component, performing assigned function. The function had changed. The role continued. I existed as tool of the Imperium, purpose defined by utility. Humanity archived, filed under previous identity. 1 year after evacuation from Carcass IV, I received communication. Official. Medical retirement. The wounds had caused permanent damage, chronic pain, reduced mobility. The body could no longer maintain military standards. I was being processed out, discharged, retired with veterans' pension, returned to civilian population. The notification felt like malfunction. I was function. How could I be retired from function? What was I without role, without designation? Relay 8 was archived. Logistics trainer was terminated. Guardsman Daly was discharged. What remained? Just Orin. Just human. Just person without purpose. They sent me to a veterans facility. Place for damaged soldiers. Bodies broken by Imperial service. Men missing limbs. Men who'd been processed by war and expelled by the military machine. We were used components, discarded after utility expired, stored in facility because the Imperium had minimum obligation to its servants. Minimum, not comfortable, not honored. Just stored. I remained there for 7 months, existing without purpose, without function. The other veterans talked sometimes, shared stories. I listened, didn't share. What would I say? That I'd relayed messages? That I'd transmitted casualty reports? That I'd survived while others died? That I'd trained replacements to die in positions I'd vacated? That I'd collaborated in systematic consumption of human beings converted into signal components? The survivor guilt they talked about didn't match my experience. I didn't feel guilty about surviving. I felt empty about it. Surviving meant nothing. Dying meant nothing. We were components. Our significance was function. Without function, we were waste. The system had discarded us because we no longer provided utility. Simple resource management. One evening, another veteran asked me about service. What I'd done. I told him, Vox Relay Operator, 70 days on Carcass IV. He asked if I'd seen combat. I said I'd heard all of it. Every order, every death, every desperate plea. Everything transmitted through channels I monitored. He asked if it bothered me. I said no. Said I'd learned to process it as data. He looked at me strangely, said that was worse than combat. Said experiencing everything secondhand and feeling nothing was worse than experiencing direct horror and feeling too much. Maybe he was right. Maybe I'd been damaged more thoroughly than the veterans missing limbs. They'd lost body parts. I'd lost something else. Something that made body parts matter. The core self. The identity beyond function. The part of human consciousness that experiences rather than processes. I tried to remember being Orindal. Before the guard. Before relay operations. Before transformation. Found fragments. Assembly lines. Precision work. Father. Brothers. Home in lower hive levels. The memories were corrupted. Distorted. Not quite real. Like they belonged to someone else. Someone who'd existed before I became Relay 8. Someone who'd been consumed by the transformation. Vrel had warned me, had told me to maintain humanity, to resist complete processing. I'd tried, remembered 3 names, carried small weight, but it hadn't been enough. The system was too powerful. The pressure too constant. The transformation too thorough. I'd become what the Imperium required, efficient component, and paid the cost Vrel had described. Lost myself completely. Late one night, I accessed facility records, searched for information about relay operators, found casualty statistics. Carcass IV campaign, 167 relay operators deployed over 18-month operation. 143 killed in action. 18 permanently disabled. 6 psychological discharges, average survival duration 11 days. Longest survival 73 days. That wasn't me. Someone had survived longer. Some other relay had beaten my duration, had become more efficient, better component. I felt nothing about it. No pride in achieving 70 days. No disappointment in being exceeded. Just data. Numbers, information without emotional content. Perfect demonstration of complete transformation. I was reading about humans dying and feeling exactly nothing. Optimal component. Thoroughly processed. Successfully consumed by the system I'd served. I wrote this account over the following weeks. Clinical. Detailed. Testimony. Not confession. Not therapy. Not processing. Just record. Someone should know what happens to relay operators. Someone should understand the consumption, the transformation, the systematic conversion of human into function. This is that record. I am not writing this because I want redemption. Redemption implies moral framework I no longer access. I'm writing this because documenting is what I do. I relay. Even now, without equipment, without function, without purpose, I relay. This is message transmission. Casualty report. Status update. I'm reporting what happened to Guardsman Orin Daly, designation Relay 8, during 70 days on Carcass 4 and 6 months training replacements. The report is accurate. The transmission is complete. The Imperium requires relay operators. Will always require them. The Vox-Casters need carriers. The antennas need attachment points. The communications network needs nodes. Humans fulfill that function. Are consumed fulfilling that function. are replaced after consumption, the cycle continues. Eternal, necessary, optimal. I trained 47 replacements. How many of those trained more? How many generations of relay operators exist because I processed the first generation? How many deaths am I responsible for through that training? The mathematics are complex, the causality diluted, but present. I am instrument of perpetuation. Even now, discharged, stored, archived, I perpetuate by existing, by having trained, by having contributed efficiency to the system.
Vrel was right. I should have maintained humanity, should have resisted complete transformation, should have accepted reduced efficiency in exchange for preserved self. But efficiency was seductive. Function was purposeful. Transformation was gradual enough that each step seemed reasonable. Each sacrifice seemed necessary. Each loss seemed acceptable, until nothing remained to lose, until self was gone completely. The question is whether this was failure or success. By imperial metrics, success. I performed function at exceptional duration, trained successful replacements, contributed to operational efficiency. By human metrics, total failure, lost identity, lost emotion, lost everything that makes human experience meaningful. But imperial metrics are the ones that matter. The Imperium measures success by function. I functioned. Therefore, success. The human cost is not calculated, not relevant, not significant. I exist now as testimony, as warning, as demonstration. This is what the Imperium does to relay operators. This is the consumption. This is the cost. We are converted from human into signal, from person into component, from self into function. The transformation is complete, irreversible, permanent. Other veterans at the facility have hope. They talk about recovery, about eventually returning home, about reconnecting with families, about rebuilding lives. I have none of that. Hope requires future. I have only archive, only memory of function, only awareness that I was component and now am discarded component. There is no rebuilding, there is only existing, processing existence as data, relaying testimony about consumption. The Imperium will continue requiring relay operators, will continue processing humans into signal components, will continue achieving efficiency through consumption. This account will change nothing. The system doesn't care about individual experience, doesn't care about cost, doesn't care about testimony. The system requires function, provides function, discards components after utility expires. I am discarded component. Writing testimony no one will read, relaying message no one receives. Transmitting into void. But transmission is what I am, what I was made into, what I remain. The Vox-Caster was removed, but the function persists. I am relay, will always be relay. The designation was retired, but the transformation was permanent. This is my final transmission. Status report from the far side of consumption. A casualty notification for Orendal, consumed by Imperial service and converted into Relay 8. The person died. The function continues. The testimony is complete. The Emperor protects. They told us that. Told us faith was shield. That duty was armor. That service was salvation. The Emperor didn't protect the relay operators. 143 died on Carcass 4. I heard most of them die through the Vox. Heard their final transmissions, their last words, their deaths converted to data and relayed to command. The Emperor protected nothing. The system consumed everything. The faith was operating system. The duty was consumption mechanism. The service was transformation into component. I fulfilled my duty, served faithfully, maintained function, and was consumed completely. The Imperium got exactly what it required. Was one more relay operator, one more signal node, one more human converted into tool, used until damaged, says discarded after utility expired. The process was efficient, optimal, successful. This is what remains when humanity is processed out. This testimony, this empty awareness, this function without purpose, this relay without signal, this component without system. This is the cost the Imperium doesn't calculate. The remainder after consumption. The ghost and discarded machine. I was Orindel. I became Relay 8. I remained transmission. Forever relaying, forever testifying, forever demonstrating what the Imperium requires and what that requirement costs. The message is simple, clear, precise. We are not soldiers. We are not servants. We are not heroes. We are components. Designed for specific function, deployed until failure. Replaced after consumption. The system continues. The consumption is eternal. The testimony is complete. Relay 8, final transmission. All systems offline. Function terminated. Archive complete.